welcome to How Music Can Make or Break Your Production. Today's presenters are Frankie Pine and Mandi Collier from Whirly Girl Music, and Randy Hart, the Creative Services Director for Aircast Music, which is the custom scoring division of Megatrax Production Music. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Randy Hart, and let you introduce yourself with a little bit more detail, if you wouldn't mind doing so now.
I'll be happy to. That picture on your screen is indeed of me. That's pretty much all I do all day is just sit at the piano and stare at it. So that could be any point during the day. In reality, I oversee the custom division of Aircast for Megatrax, and our projects that we do are a very wide range. Probably the best illustration of that is everything from the yodeling cow on the California dairy commercials to a full live symphony for a radio network. So anything, those as extremes, and anything and all in between. News music packages for networks, cable networks, show opens, local affiliates, promos. So it's more television probably than radio, but we have done some radio. In fact, I just finished a project for radio. So that, in a nutshell, is who I am and what I do.
And Frankie and Mandi, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves a little bit as well, please.
I'm Frankie Pine. I'm an independent music supervisor. I've worked on everything from Magic Mike to all the Oceans movies to television shows like Newsroom, Nashville, Body of Proof. I've been doing it for 20 years, and I hail from the wonderful state of Ohio.
And my name's Mandi, and I am Frankie's music coordinator and assistant music supervisor on Nashville. So I've been with Frankie for about 3 years now, a little over 3 years, and I've just moved to California from Texas about 5 years ago. So kind of have just, been with Frankie and learning the ropes and of how to be a music supervisor. So that's pretty much the gist.
Thank you. Today we're going to talk about how music can make or break a production. And so I thought it would be great if we could start with some of your experiences, Randy, Mandi, and Frankie, from your professional past, where music was really making the production or really breaking the production. Would you mind sharing some of your stories?
Of course, be happy to. Well, I'll give a couple of examples of situations that both really are kind of evolutionary, or they showcase the evolution of a starting point and what you ultimately end up with. And of course, it's a very subjective medium, so obviously there is no one single correct answer for what piece of music may work in any given application. You know, one person can say, hey, it needs to be Frank Sinatra, and the other person can say it needs to be Katy Perry. I mean, as a poor but illustrative example nonetheless. So the subjectivity range obviously is all over the map. The first example was for a show open that we had been commissioned for a program about a series about Alaskan gold mining and miners. And the visual, the story obviously was going to take place in Alaska. The opening sequence, which we did not see, the visual, was supposed to be very rustic, was obviously going to showcase the gorgeous Alaskan landscape, and the music was going to set a tone for each episode. So the first creative conversation that there was had the producer saying, you know, we want something that is kind of the old West, something that people usually associate with gold mining, kind of a ragtime piano motif or approach. So we, I think it was a Thursday, created a ragtime piano theme and some bumpers that would support the various storylines, sad segment, happy segment, scary segment, that kind of thing, all within the ragtime piano motif. And on Monday, when I was calling to follow up with him, we found out that producer was no longer there. So there goes phase one. Obviously, shortly thereafter, a new person arrived on the scene, leading the charge for the program, and his vision was something that was more grand and was a little bit more reminiscent of a grandiose, not Ansel Adams-ish necessarily, but something musically that provided a bit more of a expansive, gorgeous Wild West theme. And what we did was submitted a library track. Now, granted, this was to be ultimately a custom score, but we submitted a library track just to determine and generate some discussion. We did not submit that with the thought of that being the be-all, end-all piece of music that would be used, but we wanted to generate some discussion that would draw out some other elements and some other creative points that we could work from, which it did. The conversation then turned to, okay, we want a little more epic orchestral. I looked back in my notes and I remember seeing that term was used. Even maybe a bit ethnic, Appalachian sounding was bandied about, those terms. Now, granted, even though Alaska is far, far away, 3,000 miles away from Appalachia, that music does denote a certain vibe to it. It has very strong Irish underpinnings, and so within the scope of if you put all of those elements and discussion points into a blender, we came up with the final theme that they created. They posted the open to, and so they were able to utilize the musical hit points that we had, and it worked out. It worked out flawlessly. So this example kind of illustrates a couple of points that Leona had asked me to make. One is choose the music first. That can really help go a long way in dictating the visuals, and in addition to some cut points that it can match, it can also really help direct and establish a very strong direction and vibe from which you can build on. And the second point that this kind of illustrates, but I think is a common point that can apply pretty much across the board or whenever possible, and that is there was always one person, one point of contact that was dealing with this project as opposed to a committee. And now this was not an example of a broadcast group needing a news-related theme or something that needed to satisfy multiple markets. It was a single production with a single producer in charge. But he had the vision, and ultimately he was able to make the decisions, and that clearly streamlines the process. So that's story one, Leona.
Great. Do you want to share one of your stories, Mandi and Frankie?
Well, yeah. I mean, in our case, how music can make a production, Nashville, our work on Nashville is definitely probably the most prime example of how it can make a production. Nashville is obviously such a music-intensive show, and music plays very much a character in the show, and it, as Frankie can attest, some of the songs are, she participates in the writing process a lot of times. She goes and talks to the writing team, and they tell her what the song needs to say, and she helps identify what the story is trying to convey to the audience through the songs.
And that's typically a process that is about a month and a half away from us ever actually shooting that song to picture. So it's kind of an ever-changing process that we go through while sitting in the writer's room and kind of just talking about the evolution of these characters and where they're going to be headed, the feel of it, because I think each one of our characters does have a very certain feel. So there are a lot of elements that go into how those songs get chosen for each one of our characters to sing. And I think that, obviously we've done a great job in that, our, whenever an episode of Nashville airs, if that song is available on iTunes, it typically will fly up the iTunes country chart at that point. So it does resonate heavily with our audience.
Now, you also had some tips that you wanted to share. Do you want to share any of those at this time?
Well, typically one of the things that we always say, I think it's great that people want to call us and reach out and see, what kind of music we're looking for. But we do ask that, do your research first. Know the kind of shows that we work on. I love to be able to tell people that their song is great, but at the same time, it's like if I can't use it in any one of my productions, that doesn't really mean a whole lot, if you know what I mean. So I would definitely say definitely know what you're sending and what you're sending it for.
You've each shared one story so far, and you both have a lot of experience, or you all have a lot of experience with music really making a production because that's your job. Have you had any experience where you saved the day or the music was really breaking the production, something where it wasn't going quite right that you can give a little insight from? Randy?
Well, again, because it's subjective, it's hard to say anything was wrong. Things can work better than, one idea can work better than another idea. In the case of branding, which is probably one of the better examples, when you're trying to brand, for instance, a television affiliate, a local television affiliate, they may have been using the same musical series of notes for a number of years, and they want to refresh. That maybe they're going to be getting a new graphics, they're going to get a whole new on-camera look, they're going to get a new set, they may have a new anchor, so they want to refresh the music at the same time. Frequently, choosing and creating the right audio brand and right mnemonic or audio logo, whatever you want to call it, all is the same thing. It can be a series of 5, 6, or 7, 8 notes, whatever it may be. The best example, of course, is the NBC chimes, to where when you hear it, you automatically associate that with whatever the product or the station, in this case, may be. And so you want that to, just as with a longer score of music, you want it to help support the personality and the underlying message of who that station wants to be. So frequently when we are called upon to rebrand a station, and we're looking at replacing an audio logo that may be anywhere between 5 and 10 years old, even longer, musical styles change. So not only instrumentally, an older theme may date a production, but also, it gives an opportunity to kind of take a fresh look at the personality that needs to be musically supported, and it can work a lot better. It just gets people's attention at the very least, and then they get used to it, and it kind of evolves into its own little life as a musical brand.
Frankie and Mandi, the work that you're doing on Nashville, the music is so much the identity of the show. It would be difficult to imagine a particular show without the music that you are carefully selecting and shaping for the show. But Mandi was sharing with us beforehand that the process by which the music goes from submission to selection and then use is fairly rigorous and goes through a lot of different layers. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about how that process contributes to the way the music is really making this show, all of the different people who are playing into the ultimate selection and use of the different music that comes in.
Well, yeah, as I was saying that, it would be nice if it were just a matter of Frankie and Buddy Miller, our executive music producer, if they were the only ones that, chose the songs and, whatever they picked made it to the recording process. But, probably both good and bad. There is a lot of approval processes. Frankie and Buddy kind of come up with these ideas, then send them to the executive producers, which, there's two of them that kind of weigh in on those choices. And, once they agree on something, then the studio and the network have to approve it. So it's many hoops are jumped through when a song actually makes it to broadcast and makes it to the recording process. And sometimes, songs are recorded that never actually make it to air. So, I think it's definitely frustrating sometimes whenever, there's a particular idea that we see or that we think works best, and then maybe everybody doesn't feel the same. But probably, it's a checks and balances system that is probably definitely a good thing. And I think it kind of makes everyone's vision realized at the end of the day, when everyone has a bit of weigh-in on the choices. So,
Leona, may I make a comment about that?
Please do.
Well, as a nod to Frankie and Mandi, because I'm in Nashville, I have the opportunity to, and I am out at the Grand Ole Opry quite a bit. I have the opportunity to see many of the principals come on stage and perform the songs that they will have chosen, and that these principal actors and actresses will have recorded. And just as you'll see when an act hits the stage and they start into their song and the audience reacts with applause because they're familiar with it and they like it, that same thing happens with the folks from Nashville that come on and perform. And it's really something to see, because these people were not necessarily, they did not necessarily strike out to become musical artists, although they're all very capable. I've really been impressed, and it's wonderful casting to see the people that have been chosen, because not only obviously can they act, but they can all, for the most part, sing really well, and they've all got great stage presence. And when they launch into these songs, to see that audience reaction, I think is that's a classic example of that song making the emotional connection. So that was all. I just wanted to say that's acknowledged here, and that's hard to do, and you guys obviously do it very well.
Thanks, Randy.
Thanks very much.
All right, we've reached the point in our presentation where we can open it up to questions from the people on the line. I have a lot of questions for all of you, so if nobody else wants to speak up, I've got some that we can keep going with. But is there anybody in our listening audience who'd like to come off mute now and ask Frankie, Mandi, or Randy any questions? And if you do, please introduce yourself at the beginning of your question. Oh, wait, we've got one by text, it looks like, from Tim at KAKE, a friend of ours. He says, what's the best way for a composer to network with music supervisors? You want to take that, Mandi and Frankie?
The best thing for composers to do is just reach out and call if you feel like your music is warranted in any one of the shows that this music supervisor is particularly working on, or if this is a business about friendships. Strike up a conversation, strike up friendships where, when you're coming down the line and something new comes along, we can go, oh, what about that guy? Let's submit his music. And, case in point, I have a good friend that I just do some commercial work with up in Minneapolis, and I got some of his music submitted recently for some ABC pilots, and he actually got really close and into getting a few gigs out of it.
That's great.
So don't be shy. Make phone calls.
Tim, I'll bet you didn't think it was going to be that easy.
It does, thanks.
Can you guys hear me now?
Oh, yeah,
yes.
there you are.
Okay.
Welcome.
Apparently, if my phone is on, anyway. Thank you for the answer, ladies. Thank you very much. And Randy, we'll see how it goes.
Well, that's good. I'm sure they promise nothing, but the opportunity to tag up with them is great. So
I think the thing to think about and to realize is that it's not about necessarily crossing the finish line fast enough. I mean, sometimes it takes it may take a year or so, but like Frankie said, starting the conversation and building a relationship, I think, is the most important part, and that makes a certain music supervisor really want to work hard to get your music heard. And even since like she said, this didn't necessarily produce a gig this particular time, but who knows, maybe the next time, maybe those people that were listening to his demos really liked him and said, he didn't really work for that one, but maybe he will for another one. So it's all about being patient and just kind of counting on your craft and really just like she said, building relationships and putting your faith in those a little bit. So,
well, along those lines, how does one even find the connections to make?
Well, our numbers are not hidden. You can. There's a great book that is it Rich Ezra puts out called The Film and Television Guide. It also, it lists every music supervisor that's working here in Los Angeles, and it also lists all the composer agents in town. And that's another avenue. It's get yourself affiliated with a composer agent, because they're going to be the ones that are going to walk you into the offices for the music supervisors and the, music department executives at ABC, NBC. They have those relationships where they can get you in front of the right people and to get your music heard. And also, just as what Mandi was saying, it's as much as I love this guy's music and I submitted it for this, a few shows, now there's at least 15 other people that have now heard his music.
Cool.
And they're going to remember it if they liked it.
All right. Excellent. Thank you for the advice.
Mhm.
Do we have any other questions from our audience? All right, I've got one I'd really like to ask, and it's for all three of you. You're in a very unique position, I think, all three of you, in that Randy works so predominantly with custom music, and that Nashville is a program where you, Frankie, and Mandi are selecting music that will be reworked and interpreted for the show by the people performing in the show. Can you talk a little bit about production music, unmodified, out-of-the-box music that is ready to go? Is it possible for production music to make a production? If you're using a track that's already in existence beforehand, can you talk about some situations where that's really worked for you in your work, whether it's radio-ready music or production music, versus something that you do get to manipulate the way that the three of you are right now?
Ladies?
Well, I say from the point of Nashville, we have used a lot of new artists in the show as well that are, these are songs that our actors are not singing, but we've used them in montages where I feel like it makes a huge impact on, how the emotion of a particular scene comes across. I don't know of any, production music, library music that I've ever used that has accomplished that, but certainly, existing songs, existing bands, their music, when it's used in a way over a montage where it creates a connection and an emotional element that's there between that song and those scenes, I think it can be highly effective. I don't know. Magic Mike probably had 3 montages in it of where, we just found a killer ass song and got cut in over 3 or 4 different scenes of the guys dancing or, of them out partying and drinking or whatever the scenario was, where you really kind of felt like you were there and in that moment with them.
Randy, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, from my front porch, so to speak, frequently production music. First of all, when somebody needs a custom score, there's usually one of 2 or 3 different reasons that they would need or want that. One might be exclusivity, where they don't want anybody else to have that score. One might be it needs to be have specific production elements and instrumentation and breakpoints and whatever. And the other one may be, the last one may be ownership. So getting there when they need one of those criteria, that production music, as great as it can be, would not allow for that, then they can use that as a reference. And not only can it be a good reference, hey, we found a track, and it could be a commercial track, a commercial piece of music too, for that matter. We want something to sound like, fill in the blank, Justin Timberlake, whatever. But a lot of times a musical reference, if it is a production music track, can be modified, and this is specific, of course, to Megatrax and Aircast. I don't know how our competitors may address this, but we have the ability to modify those tracks too. So they not only can, find the perfect track that they want, but if there needs to be a different lyric that needs to be sung or a different mix or whatever, then that can work very well in that situation too.
And we can, and to touch on that, production music really helps us kind of in the opposite way because, we can't tell you how many times we get asked for, like you said, we want a song like Justin Timberlake. Can we get this Beyonce song? Can we, and the budget is $5,000. So obviously, anything in that realm would be impossible. So, that's when production music can really help us and can really, make our productions is we find something that has a similar sound, similar feel, and, isn't going to cost us, the entire budget of the show. So, and like Randy said, we have had situations where in one of our shows we needed an Armenian song, and, what the director wanted wasn't what we were hearing, and so we actually, did request modifications to the library tracks that we had received, and we were able to do that. So, so that kind of happens to us, and, we use production music all the time, and sometimes it really does save the day.
All right, we have reached the end of our allotted time, and so I'd like to ask each of our presenters today if you have any parting shots you'd like to offer on music making or breaking a production before we sign off for now.
There was one point, if I may, that I didn't actually have an illustration of, but I think it bears mentioning here, and that is trying a contrarian approach. One of my colleagues on a panel that I was recently on, it was actually his idea, and I thought it was just brilliant in that if you're putting music up against a picture and you try something that is totally 180 degrees opposite of what that picture may be, that can really be startling and really be attention-getting. And sometimes it can be just so powerful and very magical. So that is just simply to say, try a contrarian approach and see if that may work.
Ladies, any closing remarks?
I don't think so. Do we have anything else to say?
No, I mean, I guess the like I said before, the best thing about this business is our relationships, and I think that's how we all become successful in this business. And don't be afraid to forge one.
Okay, well, thank you to our three presenters today. Watch Nashville on ABC. It's been picked up for another season, and you can look forward to that this fall. So thank you all so much, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye now.